Fixing us intently with her gaze and smiling sweetly, this beautiful young woman casts a spell over us. Her features are regular and refined, her skin pale. In her copper-colored hair she wears a jeweled diadem. And she's dressed exquisitely in a diaphanous gown, clasped by armlets and a belt of gold, made of material so thin that the well-formed body the painter cleverly shows us through the cloth seems almost naked. She sits coolly poised yet relaxed, with casually crossed legs in a garden on a stone seat. The colors of the walls, balustrades and sculptures surrounding her, and of the villa in the background, repeat the same combination of rust red, ochre and white, colors at their most intense in her clothes, jewels and hair, and in the flowers in the picture too. But the figure of the young woman dominates the scene. In accordance with the Renaissance point of view, she is, as woman, the measure of all things. Traditionally, this picture is believed to represent Flora, goddess of spring. With a gesture of triumph, she holds up 3 carnations between her thumb and forefinger, so that we see them against a cloudy sky where the colors of the foreground of the picture are repeated in the glow of evening. This drama of gesture, color, and light leads our attention to the background landscape. Although the artist seems to look upwards towards the figure of Flora from below, we look down on the landscape as if from a higher viewing position. In fact, we're looking across to the city of Antwerp, seen from the left bank of the river Schelde. At the center of the view, we can see the cathedral tower. The Schelde is busy with river traffic, for in the mid-16th century, when this picture was painted, Antwerp was the richest city in Flanders. The realistic presentation of peasant life in the surrounding countryside is in keeping with the degree of detail in the view as a whole. Along the roads and in the meadows and fields, we see people and cattle. But the figure of Flora is removed from this rough, everyday world. She's sitting in a garden richly decorated with sculpture. It's more an architectural setting than a natural one, a complete contrast to the common farm landscape, a perfected version of the cultivated Renaissance ideal. And in Flora's own idealized beauty, her sumptuous clothes, and above all, her knowing nakedness, she appears much less a mortal being than a symbol, an allegory, a goddess. The emphasis on flowers in the picture, the fact that the figure is shown out of doors, and the time of year suggested by the landscape details, indicate that this is the goddess of spring. And yet, her scant clothing and her hardly disguised erotic attraction suggest rather that she is Venus, the goddess of love. Or perhaps, as has often been suggested, the features of the 2 goddesses have been combined. In this case, the figure could be seen as Flora Meretrix, the famous courtesan of ancient Rome. But if this were so, what an ambiguous reputation she would be bestowing upon Antwerp, the city where she appears triumphant, with carnations held aloft. Jan Matsys painted this picture in 1559, only a year after he'd been allowed to return to Antwerp, his hometown, after 14 years of absence after being banished for heresy. It is not known where he spent his long years of exile. It's assumed that he went where other persecuted Flemish Protestants settled, to Amsterdam, Frankfurt, or Frankenthal. But the stylistic similarity of his paintings to those of the school of Fontainebleau near Paris suggests that he was also active there. Italian and French artists invited to Fontainebleau met and mingled at the courts of the French kings Francis I and Henry IV, and through their painting developed the specific style now associated with this setting. The somewhat stiff and affected poses in which the king's mistresses liked to be portrayed, the way they would be shown bathing or attending to their hair or dress, are very like those found in the female portraits of Jan Matsys in their mood of icy eroticism. And yet it is possible that Jan Matsys studied these latest artistic developments in Italy as well as in France. This picture of Flora, now in Stockholm, painted in 1561, has a view of the port of Genoa as its background. Again, beyond the figure of the woman in a splendid garden, we look down into a landscape. Such views from above were devised by a friend of the Massys family, Joachim Patinier. The father of Jan Massys, the painter Quentin Massys, sometimes worked together with Patinier. On these occasions, each would contribute his own particular speciality to the work of the other. From his days in his father's workshop, Jan Massys was familiar with this way of working, so it has been suggested that the landscape in his picture in Hamburg might be the work of the young painter Peter Bruegel, later called Bruegel the Elder, or possibly of Jan Massys's brother Cornelius. During the Renaissance, an interest in the art and literature of antiquity was felt by nearly all artists. Jan Massys felt it too. In fact, this picture shows him to have been well versed in secret religious tradition and pagan antiquity. Behind Flora stands a sculpted figure in which the world of Rome and that of Antwerp meet. It shows the Roman soldier Silvius Brabo, renowned for having freed the shipping traffic on the Schelde from attack by the pirate Druon Antigon. The two peacocks on the balustrade are symbolic of riches and power. Flora's sitting pose is like that of antique river gods, while the figure of the satyr in front of the rosebush recalls Roman statues of Pan. The many flowers in the picture are of symbolic significance. Often such flowers in paintings of this time would allude to the transitoriness of life, or in pictures on the theme of the five senses, the sense of smell. In medieval symbolism, flowers, especially herbs associated with healing, were a symbol of the Christian doctrine of salvation. They may allude to Mary's purity, or in the case of red carnations, to the salvation of man through the Son of God. All the flowers in the picture, but especially the carnations, could in those days have had a yet deeper, more secret meaning that only the initiate could guess at. To others, they seemed simply decorative. In the spiritual life of the cities of the Netherlands from the 15th century onwards, performance societies, giving recitals of poetry and putting on plays, had an important role. One such company, that of the Antwerp Painters' Guild, the Guild of St. Luc, had chosen for its coat of arms the violière, a flower much like the stock. Other performance societies chose for themselves the names of other flowers, such as the marigold or the carnation. They had mottos such as "Free in Love" or "United in Friendship." The white carnation Flora holds in her hand might then also be the flower symbol of one of these societies. In Haarlem, for example, there were many Flemish Protestants who had fled to more liberal Holland in order to be able to practice their faith without fear of punishment. And they had formed a society called White Carnation. In betrothal portraits, red carnations were a symbol of fidelity. The motto of the Performance Society of the Antwerp Painters' Guild was "United in Friendship." Flora wears their symbolic flower in her hair and carries it in her bouquet. Massys blends Christian and pagan symbolism into a new system of meaning. His allegory, painted for the rich citizens of Antwerp, seems to contain secret allusions to the Protestant beliefs and practices that were forbidden, yet which could be avowed precisely in such associations as the performance societies. Is this perhaps the reason for Flora's puzzling smile?